Back to the studio now, and TRT World's editor-at-large, Ahmed Al-Burai, joins me now live in the studio. Ahmed, I just have to remember where we were at yesterday when we were talking about Ismail Haniyeh's speech, his call for Palestinians to take drastic measures in response to this. We're seeing today Palestinians come out in unison, but we haven't seen the violence that appeared to be called for. I think I can say that's a good thing, that we're at least seeing Palestinians right now respond with one voice.
I think Ismail Haniyeh, first of all, didn't call for violence. He just called for the people to talk to the street, to take to the street, to express their emotions. And I was listening to Professor Ashrawi when she was speaking, and I do echo what she said. The people of Palestine, the Palestinians, they don't need to listen to their leaders when it comes to the holy shrines, the holy places like Jerusalem. It's up to them to decide whether they want to go to the street to express what they need, or in these kind of things, especially the word intifada, which is a spontaneous demonstration that happens without any kind of guidance or without anybody telling them what to do. Now the people are in the streets, they're protesting. Nobody was expecting that it's going to be in these numbers. Many of the people, many of the observers thought that it's going to be massive demonstrations, but it seems that there is a kind of frustration along the streets so far. I was following the images coming from Jerusalem, coming from Gaza, the West Bank, mainly the West Bank. Personally, I was expecting, because of the President Mahmoud Abbas, when he was speaking about a popular intifada and Ismail Haniyeh, I thought that the people will be by hundreds of thousands in the streets. But to be honest, when I look at the screens now, it's not what I was expecting. Maybe because of the total disappointment of the whole process. Are they going to have an effect on this international community? The images coming from the neighboring countries like Syria, like Yemen, the people fed up and they think there is no way to find a solution. And that's why you feel like, what is the benefit? What can we do when we go to the streets? On the other hand, still it's very early to say that this is the last issue, because it depends on the retaliation from the Israeli side, how they're going to respond to that. If it continues in this way, if Israel doesn't move, because I was reading on Reuters today that the White House is asking Israel to restrain from moving the embassy immediately, or refraining from using any excessive force against the demonstrations and protesters. So it depends, to be honest, on the reaction of the Israelis on the ground as well, whether this reaction will retaliate more violent reactions, or still it's going to be the same peaceful, popular demonstrations on the ground. Also, it depends on the Palestinian Authority and how Mahmoud Abbas and the PLO will retaliate in terms of cutting all the relations with Israel, in terms of cancelling the security cooperation between both sides.
A couple things there. First, I would like to clarify, as you were saying, because so many people, especially in a foreign audience, assumes that the word intifada inherently means violence. And you've clarified that it does not. At the same time, though, you actually mentioned you're a bit surprised at the lower numbers that have come out just in non-violent protests today, that it hasn't been this massive movement that so many were actually expecting. I'm wondering if this has something to do with, and let me think a little bit out loud here, if you're dealing with two administrations between Israel and the United States that are particularly unpopular at home. So when you see them working in unison and making these kinds of declarations, perhaps Palestinians can say, you know what, let's step back a bit. These aren't leaders that the world and that their own people take extremely seriously right now. Do you think that's running through the minds of any of the Palestinians today, that this is coming from leaders that have somewhat fractured, at best, support at home, and that this decision may not be necessarily permanent?
At the end of the day, you cannot dictate on the Palestinians, on the people, what to do. But for my personal opinion, I think Donald Trump is still the president of the superpower of the world. He's the president and the broker of the peace negotiation. He was the guy, I mean, the United States was the godfather of the peace process. But to be honest, let's take it more deeply, not to blame Donald Trump himself only. Because if you go back, it was 1995 when this bill was endorsed by the Congress. And that was at the time of Bill Clinton. So it's not, you know, the waiver is signed every 6 months, and every president, including Clinton, George W. Bush the son, and Barack Obama used to defer the relocation of the embassy. But originally it was the congressman who unanimously signed this kind of bill and asked for the relocation of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, a move that nobody would endorse. The whole world doesn't agree with this. Yesterday, President Erdogan talked to the Pope, and he said that we need to maintain the status quo. So everybody was a kind of agreeing that whether the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, that Jerusalem is very sensitive, we should maintain the status quo so far. And it's by de facto, it's the capital of Israel. Everything is in Jerusalem, but it's a kind of illegal existence because of the international conventions. Now, you cannot just say to the Palestinians, forget about everything, forget about all the paradigms, all the international laws that everybody know, and let's just consider this kind of leaders, these kind of moves, that they're reckless, they're dangerous, he's naive, he doesn't know about policy. Even the ambassador he sent, he's a bankruptcy advisor, David Friedman, he's not a diplomat even. So the Donald Trump, he's dispatching his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. So he deals with the whole issue as if it's a business negotiation. But when it comes to negotiation, there's something to be mutual compromise. The Palestinians are going to cede something in return of this. The Israelis are ceding something. But to be honest, he's completely sided by the Israelis for nothing for the Palestinians left.
Okay. I know you don't have a crystal ball, Ahmed, and I know sometimes the Palestinian public is somewhat fractured, as is its leadership. But what do you envision happening now, going forward, from Palestinian leaders and the people?
The Palestinian cause for a long time, the same as the Arab Spring, the Middle East, the only constant in this region is change. And you never expect what's going to happen. The reaction of the people today is mild, is not that violent, but you don't know what's going to happen next. Maybe we don't know what kind of reaction Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu were expecting. Violence does not serve anybody. At the end of the day, if this bowl of fire started, it's like a snowball. Nobody knows how far it's going to go deep the way. So what I expect the Palestinians is a kind of a chance of truth. It's a moment of truth for the Palestinians, for Fatah and Hamas. This is the first time in history for the past 10 years at least, since the rift that happened after 2007, that both leaders agree on something. We need to sit together and try to reshuffle all the cards we have to reevaluate the policies of negotiation. They already dead and buried, moribund peace process because it was completely brokered by the United States. Now it's time for the PLO to try to sit together and reassess what they have. This is a very good chance. And by the way, you just take a simple example. Think of what's happening here in Turkey. The parliament days ago unanimously agreed on this. The HDP, the opposition, the MHP, the CHP, and the AK Party, they never agree on one thing. But for this, here in Turkey, everybody, they never agree on one football team. But now everybody is agreeing on this. So it's a kind of consensus building up in the Muslim world. The reaction, the popular reaction on the ground is not what we expecting. But still, it's very early to say that this is the reaction. It depends on how Israel is going to react as well.
Okay. Ahmed Al-Burai, thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us. We can actually turn now to